Zeke, Camila, and Hugo watch from above as the flames engulf the city, just as Jill had predicted. Camila, observing the chaos, wonders aloud about Jill's true identity. Hugo intervenes, pointing out that the burning strategy resembles one devised by Beale, implying that the old man might still be alive. To add to the tension, black-hooded agitators appear to be advancing on the castle. "Are we protecting the Emperor now?" Hugo asks. Camila, skeptical, asks bluntly if Hugo will betray them. Hugo reassures her with firm resolve. He reminds her that he and his men owe their lives to the Emperor, who gave them a chance at redemption. They intend to repay that debt by doing their job well. Satisfied, Camila gives orders. Hugo is to protect the city and His Majesty, while she and Zeke handle the situation where they are. Zeke, scanning the area, spots Marquise Beale and the Crown Prince among the hooded figures. Meanwhile, Jill struggles, pleading with the little dragon to free her, insisting that His Majesty is in danger. The dragon, unconcerned, calmly assures her that there is no need to worry. If he wanted to, he could incinerate the entire city in seconds. Jill harshly retorts that such an act would only serve to harden Hadis's heart even further. The little dragon sighs and begins to explain his reasoning. Now that the spear has come into play, the same tragedy that befell Sphere could befall countless other girls. The situation is spiraling out of control. He adds that the spear is here to confirm Jill's identity. However, in order to be restored to its original form, the spear seeks a vessel, preferably a 14-year-old girl. Although Jill is not an ideal vessel due to her age, a host older than 14 can still be controlled. The dragon continues, revealing a disturbing truth. Jill, as the magical shield protecting Hadis from the goddess's love, has become a key player in this dangerous game. Kratos, the goddess of love, believes she can do anything in the name of love. Her ultimate goal is to marry the Dragon Emperor. Jill, trying to find a loophole, asks if the situation could be resolved if Hadis were to marry the spear instead. The dragon rejects the idea, explaining that only Hadis himself is suitable, not as the Emperor, but as the goddess's desired mate. Jill sarcastically suggests marrying the spear and hanging it on a wall as decoration, but the dragon rejects the idea in exasperation. He explains that Kratos is too obsessive. If he doesn't get what he wants, he could end up wiping out every woman on the continent. Worse, if Hadis were to accept Kratos, Jill would inevitably die. Jill grows frustrated and questions the point of her confinement if she is supposed to act as Hadis's shield. The dragon, sensing her agitation, steps back to recount an old legend. The Dragon Emperor's consort once impaled herself on the heavenly sword, sealing the goddess away. However, this act bound the goddess to the consort, ensuring that she would never stop pursuing her. The goddess is drawn to Jill because she possesses the dragon consort's ring, an artifact that makes it impossible for Kratos to lose sight of her. After this revelation, the little dragon transforms into the heavenly sword itself, its glowing form a stark reminder of the role Jill must play. Jill realizes the truth. The plan all along was to use her to impale the goddess, just as the original consort had done. This, she concludes, is why she was made Hadis's consort. However, she finds the situation contradictory. Hadis, who once used her as a pawn, is now trying to save her. The little dragon, sensing his inner turmoil, offers him one last piece of information. He says that there is an easy way to kill the goddess, a method so simple that not even Hadis has realized it yet. Determined, Jill urges the little dragon to free her, insisting that she will confront and repel the goddess using the heavenly sword. The dragon hesitates, arguing that the task is too difficult, but Jill stands firm, claiming that she has seen the future. She reveals the harsh truth. All of this will ultimately lead to the destruction of Baleberg. The prince's faction will ally with Gerald against the Emperor, sparking a civil war in Kratos. His Majesty will continue to protect the country, but his efforts will only garner more hatred from his people. Turning to the dragon, she asks if he is willing to allow such a future to unfold. They must end it all, here and now. Resolute, Jill adds one final request. Failing that, she demands that the dragon use the heavenly sword to impale her along with the goddess. The dragon reminds her that they had originally planned to use her as bait, but Jill bitterly counters, claiming that would have been better. With tears in her eyes, Jill demands to know why they tried to protect her instead of seeking her help. It is this contradiction that angers her the most. Jill composes herself and decides to act. Before she steps forward, however, she asks the dragon, why did Hadis describe her as a very intelligent woman, as if they were close? The dragon, shocked, quickly explains that Hadis hated her because she caused him a lot of trouble as a child. Jill seems frustrated by this response and pointedly reminds the dragon of Hadis's comment. There is a fine line between hate and love. The dragon interrupts her musings to offer an important revelation. The reason Hadis avoids saying her name is to avoid being detected by the goddess. Deep down, though, Hadis wanted to say her name, and so did the dragon. Jill shakes her head and comments that, whether gods or emperors, men are hopeless. How could they not see that such actions only serve to anger the women involved? Reflecting further, she admits that she is hopeless as well. These absurdities somehow soften her resolve. Regretting her earlier decision not to fall in love, she begins to wonder if it is really okay to love Hadis after all. Determined, she declares that she will save him because she loves him. Channeling the power of the heavenly sword, Jill breaks the barrier and prepares to face the goddess. The story flashes back to a younger Hadis, reflecting on why he cannot reunite with his family despite having one. The little dragon, present as well, apologizes and explains that Hadis is his own reincarnation and must pay off all his debts. However, Hadis does not blame the dragon. Instead, he blames the goddess, believing that love is a curse that isolates him. Rave tries to comfort him, assuring Hadis that once he finds his consort, the goddess will no longer pursue him. Inspired, Hadis vows to study diligently and become a strong emperor who can protect the world from the goddess. This, he decides, will be his purpose in life. Returning to the present, Hadis looks out at the angry crowd below as the goddess's voice echoes in his mind. She taunts him, mocking that no one will ever love or need him. Her cruel words hurt more. She accuses him of using the girl who promised to make him happy as bait. In his mind, she is the only one capable of loving someone like him. Hadis admits the truth in the goddess's words, acknowledging that even his brother probably hates him. No one wants him to exist and no one expects anything from him. Yet in the midst of this despair, he remembers Jill's words. He has her. Despite this, Hadis cannot escape his reflection on his duty. As the Dragon Emperor, his existence is critical. If he fails to fulfill this role, the country loses the protection of the Dragon God, leaving it vulnerable to the goddess's wrath. He knows that Rave would likely try to protect the land, even at the cost of his divinity. But how long can Hadis continue to pretend to have faith in the future? The temptation to end it all is overwhelming. Just then, Hugo arrives, snapping Hadis out of his thoughts. Hadis orders him to withdraw all the soldiers to the harbor, stating that he alone is enough to defend the castle. Hugo protests, expressing concern for Hadis' safety, but Hadis insists that as a monster it doesn't matter. Then a bell rings, signaling a momentous event. Jill appears, standing boldly before the entire city, fearlessly challenging the goddess Kratos. She introduces herself as Jill Servel, the wife of the Dragon Emperor, and orders the goddess to spare the city and its women. She declares that Hadis Theos Rave belongs to her, and that she will never let him go. Witnessing Jill's bravery, Hadis is shocked by her determination. He wonders if she really wants to protect someone like him, remembering her promise to protect him and make him happy. Meanwhile, Rave, still in his sword form, questions Jill's reasoning for provoking the goddess. Jill replies that her goal is to reveal the truth. The fires and curse were caused by the goddess herself. Deep down, Jill knows that the goddess will not take kindly to such a challenge. A woman revered as a deity would surely be enraged if anyone dared to claim the man she desires. At last, the goddess Kratos appears. Rave warns Jill that she only has a few minutes to act. Hadis, still confused and alarmed by the events unfolding, begins to question what Jill and the dragon are planning. However, Jill silences him with a firm command. She tells him to watch quietly and promises that she will scold him later. Turning to face the goddess, she boldly declares that no woman, not even a goddess, will be able to take her man from her. The confrontation erupts into a battle that echoes throughout the city. The city trembles as Jill faces the goddess, their first clash marking the beginning of an intense exchange of blows. Jill can sense the goddess's killing intent as the battle rages on, its destructive power spreading through the streets. In her spear form, the goddess multiplies, conjuring a devastating rain of spears that rains down upon the city. The inhabitants below can only watch in awe and terror as the sky darkens and the spears descend with deadly precision. Jill quickly forms a barrier, protecting both the city and its people. However, the strain begins to overwhelm her, and her barrier begins to falter. Just when it seems like it might fail, the Emperor's magic surges, reinforcing her barrier and deflecting the goddess's devastating attack. With her resolve burning brighter than ever, Jill hopes that the people will finally see the truth. Kratos' goddess is the true enemy. The battle escalates, and Rave marvels at Jill's unwavering strength. She confesses to him that the fight is draining her magic too quickly, and decides to end it by directly attacking the goddess's true form. Jill quickly formulates a plan, freeing Rave, sending him hurtling toward the goddess to force a direct confrontation. To her surprise, the goddess agrees. When the goddess reveals her true self and attacks, Jill skillfully outmaneuvers her and manages to catch her in a tight grip. In a calm but piercing tone, Jill greets the goddess and asks if she remembers her. The goddess, visibly shocked, demands to know how Jill was able to retain such memories. This revelation leads Jill to speculate. Was it the goddess Kratos who sent her back in time? The goddess, clearly frustrated, demands to know why it had to be Jill. Why she, of all women, became the dragon's consort. Realizing that the events mirror the fateful night in her past, Jill steels herself. This time, she vows, things will be different. She will not allow the goddess to take anything else from her. Taunting the goddess for her obsession with other people's husbands, Jill delivers a devastating blow, slicing the goddess in two and sending her hurtling away. But the attack comes at a great cost. Jill, who has lost much of her magic, begins to fall, unable to maintain her strength any longer. At that moment, Gerald appears out of nowhere and takes her into his arms. With a mischievous grin, he happily comments that she must have known he would be the one to catch her. From below, Camila and Zeke, who had been watching the scene unfold, shout warnings to Gerald, urging him not to take Jill. In response, Gerald smiles and proposes a deal. Jill can return in exchange for their lives. Before he can force her to answer, a spell hits Gerald, cutting him off. It is Hadis, who appears just in time to catch Jill. Apologizing for his delay, Hadis wastes no time in addressing Gerald. Unfazed, Gerald attempts a surprise attack from behind, but is quickly overpowered by Hadis. Cornered and realizing his disadvantage, Gerald bitterly asks if Hadis intends to declare war on his nation. An amused Hadis casually assures him that she has no such intention and is simply paying his respects. Pointing out that the goddess's spear has been broken, he mockingly orders Gerald to deliver a message. Wish the goddess a speedy recovery. Hadis warns Gerald that if he dares to use his wife as bait again, Hadis will personally ensure his defeat. With a smirk, he adds that the goddess is welcome to attend his wedding, though she may arrive a little broken. To make the point, Hadis traps Gerald in a bubble. Reminding him of the vast difference in power between them, Hadis lashes out with his sword, sending Gerald hurtling toward the distant Heika mountain range. Afterward, Bale is successfully captured. Hadis praises Jill for her courage, commenting that her actions reassured the people who witnessed her stand against the goddess. Jill, ever modest, replies that she could not have succeeded without his support. In an unexpected gesture, Hadis kneels before Jill and proposes marriage, admitting that his heart is so full of emotion that it is the only thing he can think to do. Jill, remembering how he once used her as bait, hesitates. With a smirk, she jokingly remarks that she is almost tempted to break up with him. At first, Hadis freezes in shock, but before she can respond, she faints on the spot. Later, as Hadis reflects on the events, he cheerfully states that he could have died, or at least came close to doing so. With a smile, he declares Jill to be a criminal for nearly killing the emperor. Jill, unfazed, retorts that it is his fault for having a heart attack before letting her explain. Smiling, Hadis asks if her comment means she really loves him. Blushing in annoyance, Jill replies and asks how many times she plans to ask that question. She reminds him that he has already confessed to her. Hadis remembers hearing her say, "I love you, please open your eyes," though he wonders if it was just a dream. Jill confirms that it did happen, but playfully comments that it was not in a field of flowers, as he imagines. At that moment, Rave enters the room and finds the couple still arguing. Watching the scene, Hadis complains that Jill is too reserved. Seizing the moment, Jill asks him if he loves her. Shocked, Hadis stumbles, hides under his pillow, and awkwardly asks for more time to think of a cool way to say it. Changing the subject, Jill expresses surprise at the sheer number of gifts people send her. Rave, clearly amused, explains because he publicly rejected Hadis, who then had a dramatic heart attack. People took pity on him, thinking he was so fragile that a harsh rejection could have killed him. Jill opens one of the gifts, a beautifully embroidered shawl, and without hesitation, wraps it around Hadis. He is momentarily stunned, touched by the thoughtfulness of the gesture. The accompanying note advises him to wear it to avoid catching a cold, and it seems to him that someone genuinely cares about his well-being. Jill, observing his reaction, feels a sense of relief and joy. she realizes that people are beginning to understand that the curse was not his fault. Rave, however, tempers her optimism, clarifying that it is only the inhabitants of Baleberg who have begun to change their outlook. Jill does not seem bothered, smiling as she replies that small, gradual changes are enough for now. When the moment of reflection passes, Hadis turns to Rave and, with a hint of mischief, asks if he thinks Jill truly loves him. Rave, exasperated, snaps back, declaring that he has had enough of Hadis' antics. Rave calls him ridiculous and storms out, muttering that he's going to eat out. Hadis calls out to him, threatening to split him like a spear. Without missing a beat, Rave retorts that, as the dragon god of reason, he cannot be defeated by anything illogical, and unlike the goddess, he will not be split by love. Turning his attention back to Jill, Hadis adopts a softer tone. He tells her that he knows she's upset that he hasn't used her name yet, but he suspects she's also avoiding saying her name to avoid falling in love further. At his words, Jill's face flushes, betraying her embarrassment. Her reaction is all the confirmation Hadis needs. If she loves him, then he loves her too. With renewed confidence, he gently teases her, sitting her down in front of him. He hugs her and admits something he's never told Rave and feels only she should know. Deep down, Hadis confesses that he has no faith in the future. The dream of a happy family seems like a distant fantasy. He maintains the role of Great Emperor, partly out of spite for the goddess and partly to spare Rave's sadness. But despite his efforts, he worries that his words are hollow and that he will never be able to truly change anything. He begins to doubt himself and wonders if involving Jill in his life was a mistake. Jill, touched by his vulnerability, immediately reassures him. She tells him that trying so hard is what matters, and that it is natural to have doubts. Before he can finish, Hadis interrupts her with a sudden, heartfelt confession. He loves her and doesn't want her to leave. He admits that he wouldn't know what to do if she ever did. Then, with sincere eyes, he asks her to say that she loves him again. A shocked Jill diverts the conversation and reminds him with a blush that he already promised to tell her 3 times a day. But Hadis refuses to be reassured and insists that he say it now. As Jill hesitates and begins to think of a response, Hadis suddenly leans in and kisses her. In a whisper, he tells her that it's okay if no one else sees them and that she's incredibly beautiful. Jill's response is quick and decisive. She slaps him. Meanwhile, Rave, watching from afar, reflects on the entire ordeal. He now understands that without love, they would never have been able to defeat the goddess. However, as he watches Hadis and Jill, he knows that they still have a lot to learn about each other and about themselves. If you've reached this point in the video, don't forget to leave the word exquisito in the comments. Thank you very much and see you in the next video.